listening to the Shared Security Podcast, exploring the trust you put in people, apps, and technology, with your host, Tom Estin. In episode 116 for April 13th, 2020, privacy concerns with COVID-19 contact tracing apps, the FBI's new warnings about business email compromise scams, and details on how to prevent unwanted and spam phone calls. Now more than ever, our digital privacy needs to be top of mind. Even if we're not traveling or even leaving the house, this too shall pass and we'll be back to normal sometime in the near future. That's why you should check out Silent Pocket's free download, 5 Tips from the Pros, which has actionable advice that you can take right now to improve your privacy, security, and health even in these uncertain times. You'll even get some advice from yours truly. Visit sharedsecurity.net/5tips, that's the number 5, to get your free download from Silent Pocket's newly designed website, silentpocket.com. And while you're there, check out their full product line of Faraday bags and accessories, and be sure to use discount code SHAREDSECURITY to take 15% off your order.
Over 90% of individuals show risky behavior in handling potential phishing messages, according to ClickArmor's free CanIBeFished.com self-assessment. This engaging coronavirus edition of CanIBeFished.com can help identify your team's total vulnerability to phishing attacks that exploit the pandemic situation. So test your own vulnerability to phishing attacks for free now at CanIBeFished.com.
Welcome to the Shared Security Weekly Blaze podcast, where we update you on this week's most important cybersecurity and privacy news. These podcasts are published every Monday and are 15 minutes or less, quickly giving you news that you can use. Have you heard of a concept called contact tracing? If you haven't, well, it's a procedure that governments and public health organizations use to find out where a person who has been infected by a particular disease has been and who they've been in close proximity to during the critical time that they may have been contagious. Potential contacts are then notified so that they can be told that they may have been exposed and are provided instructions on getting tested or being quarantined themselves. Now, traditionally, contact tracing has been a very manual process of interviews, phone calls, and trying to figure out contact details of potentially unknown people. But now there is new technology being used in the form of a mobile application that can automatically detect interaction with another person that has been tested positive for COVID-19. One of these apps is currently being used in Singapore, which is called Trace Together. Here's how the app works according to Trace Together's website. Using Bluetooth, Trace Together identifies other nearby phones with the app installed. It then tracks when you are in close proximity with these other people, including timestamps. If the need arises, this information can then be used to identify close contacts based on the proximity and duration of an encounter between the two users. Once an individual is confirmed with the virus, they can choose to allow the Singapore Ministry of Health to access the data in the app to help identify close contacts. Another app that is under development in Canada uses low-energy Bluetooth and GPS to identify people that have the virus and come in close proximity of you. A notice is then sent to the contact which urges them to self-isolate. So the first thing I'm sure you're thinking to yourself is that this is the beginnings of a privacy nightmare. Of course, there are good intentions here to help in fighting COVID-19, but it also opens up the possibility for privacy breaches, abuse of personal data, and even potential discrimination against people that may be infected. Now, the Trace Together app does mention that they do have certain privacy controls, such as that the app doesn't track your location or contacts, data is only stored on your phone for 21 days, said data is only accessed unless you are identified as a close contact, and that your mobile number is paired with a random ID which is exchanged between phones. Keep in mind, this is only one app. Many apps like these will be coming to market very soon, and not all will have these basic privacy controls. Oh, and who is going to be making sure that these apps are secure? So the question is, would you be okay using an app like this to help prevent COVID-19 infections? Perhaps many of us will need to compromise and risk some of our privacy in order to curb this pandemic. The FBI has announced new warnings that popular cloud-based email services are now being used to conduct BEC scams. If you're not familiar with the term BEC, well, that stands for Business Email Compromise, which is a scam where an attacker targets the CEO or the finance department of an organization and uses social engineering techniques through a phishing email to impersonate someone that a victim trusts in order to conduct a wire transfer for money, gain credit card details, or get the person to give away banking account or other credentials. With this latest FBI warning, scammers are taking advantage of organizations now moving email to cloud-based services like Gmail or Office 365. Scammers are using sophisticated phish kits that are designed to imitate and clone the login page of these popular email services in order to get a victim to hand over their email credentials. Once an attacker has gained access to a victim's email, they will search for emails that have evidence of financial transactions or discussions and then leverage that information to impersonate trusted individuals within an organization. The FBI also warned that these same BEC scams have evolved to take advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic, where BEC scams are now targeting U.S. municipalities, financial institutions, and banking customers. Here's one example the FBI gave, which is, quote, a financial institution received an email allegedly from the CEO of a company who had previously scheduled a transfer of $1 million, requesting that the transfer date be moved up and the recipient account be changed due to the coronavirus outbreak and quarantine processes and precautions. The email address used by the fraudsters was almost identical to the CEO's actual email address, with only one letter changed. This is, of course, only one of many different types of BEC scams that are trying to capitalize on the COVID-19 pandemic. For full details on the FBI's recommendations for organizations and individuals, check out our show notes. But the biggest recommendation out of all of them is to ensure you're using two-factor authentication with any cloud-based email account. As we said many times on the show before, two-factor authentication is one of the best defenses to protect not just email, but for any service you might be using on the internet. And now a word from our sponsor, Edgewise Networks. The biggest problem in security that remains unsolved are flat networks in cloud and data centers, with unprotected attack paths that allow threats to move laterally to cause data breaches. But microsegmentation using network addresses is complicated and takes too much time. But there's a better approach: Edgewise Zero Trust Auto Segmentation. Edgewise is impossibly simple microsegmentation, delivering results immediately with a security outcome that's provable. At the core of Edgewise Auto Segmentation is Zero Trust Identity, which allows workloads to communicate only after their software identity has been verified. Malicious or unimproved software is no longer allowed to communicate. Identity-based protection provides more coverage with fewer policies to make Edgewise simple to deploy and manage. No changes to the application or network are required. One solution protects virtual machines and containers in the cloud and on-premises. To stop lateral threat movement and prevent breaches, visit edgewise.net for a demo and to see results within minutes. Surprise, surprise, but did you know that new research shows that over half of the phone calls we receive are spam? I kind of feel like we don't really need a study to tell us that, right? I mean, you're probably like many of us in that the spam phone calls are constantly bombarding our phones. And despite call blocking apps from our mobile carriers and proposed FCC intervention, this problem seems to be getting worse. The survey of over 1,000 Americans from a California-based online safety services company, Pango, showed that 54% of the calls people receive are unwanted. Moreover, the tricks that scammers are using, such as the caller ID showing an unknown caller or familiar number, are working, as 55% of survey respondents actually answer their phone when calls like these come in. Sadly, almost 1 in 10 people admit to falling for a phone scam, while 1 in 3 people know someone who has fallen for a phone scam. The other data from this survey that I found interesting was that the efforts that people are doing to reduce unwanted calls. 53% of respondents state that blocking unwanted callers via the features provided by their phone is the most popular method, followed by registering their phone number on the Do Not Call registry. Last of the top 3 was blocking unwanted callers through the features provided by your mobile carrier. Note that 21% of survey respondents said that they've taken no action to try and stop these unwanted calls. One of the most effective ways that you can eliminate unwanted calls is to use the Do Not Disturb feature on your phone, which only allows calls from your personal contacts. Some phones, like Apple iPhones, actually have a feature called Silence Unknown Callers, which will send calls like these right to voicemail. Note that you'll still get calls from anyone in your contact list or recent outgoing calls. Besides these methods, there are several things that the FCC is doing, including forcing the telecom carriers to implement a technology called Caller ID authentication, which aims to stop spam calls at their source. For more details on this and other actions the FCC is taking, check out our show notes for several links on this topic. And remember, your best defense outside of a technical solution is to never pick up your phone when you see an unknown caller. Just let them go to voicemail. That's a wrap for this week's show. Visit our website, sharedsecurity.net, for previous episodes, links to our social media feeds, our YouTube channel, and to sign up for our email newsletter. First-time listener to the podcast? Please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, please share it with friends and colleagues. Thanks for listening, and see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Weekly Blaze.